The morning of March 1st, 2000. Aberdeen, New South Wales. Police walked into John Price's house and stopped. Not because the victim had died from 37 wounds, but because of what happened after. After the victim died, Katherine Knight did something no words in any language could fully describe. Something the most experienced police officers in Australia said they had never seen in their entire careers. Something the court would later describe as extremely brutal, and the reason her trial lasted less than a single day. She pleaded guilty, no dispute, no denial, because there was nothing left to deny. Katherine Mary Knight, the first woman in Australian history sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole.
Katherine Mary Knight, born 24 October 1955, in Tenterfield, New South Wales, grew up in Aberdeen, in a family with alcoholic parents and a violent environment. She worked at the Aberdeen Abattoir, a job she mastered early on. Knight's history of violence began on her wedding night with her first husband. Before meeting Price, she had been in several relationships, all of which ended in violence. None of those men could have imagined the woman they loved was capable of what she would go on to do, and no one within the legal system stopped her before it was too late. John Charles Thomas Price, 41, known to friends as Pricey, lived in Aberdeen, New South Wales. He was a mine worker at Muswellbrook, the father of 4 children from a previous marriage. Those who knew him described him as hard-working, loving toward his children, and always looking out for those around him. He knew Katherine Knight was dangerous. He had told his friends as much. He went to the police station to apply for an intervention order against her on 29 February 2000, the day before everything happened, and he had never let her move in with him, despite their relationship spanning years. He knew, but that still wasn't enough to protect him. The morning of 1 March 2000, when Price didn't show up for work, a colleague decided to go check on him. This was unusual. Price never missed work without a reason. He went to Price's home in Aberdeen, knocked, but got no response. He pushed the door open, and what he saw was horrifying. He called police immediately. New South Wales police were dispatched to the address in Aberdeen straight after. On entering the house, officers confirmed Price had died. This was clearly a serious criminal matter, and a formal investigation was opened immediately. At the same time, officers found Katherine Knight unconscious inside the house, having taken a large quantity of sleeping tablets. She was rushed to hospital. The entire house was sealed off immediately. Price's home in Aberdeen became one of the most complex and distressing scenes New South Wales police had ever dealt with. The crime scene examination team worked meticulously, documenting every detail, collecting every piece of evidence with great care. What they found inside that house, beyond Price's body, showed a level of brutality far beyond anything most investigators had faced in their careers. One particularly notable detail: on the dining table in the house, there were plates of food already prepared. Each plate had a name written on it, the name of each of Price's children. As for the contents of those plates, that was recorded in the court file, but it's something we cannot and will not describe directly. It's enough to know that this is why even the most experienced police officers had to step outside to catch their breath. And this is why the judge described this case as unprecedented in Australian legal history. This was not an impulsive act. This was deliberate, planned, and carried out with calm, meticulous clarity. Those plates of food were found and secured before any of Price's children could ever see them. John Price's body was taken to a forensic facility for formal examination. The results confirmed Price died from a direct attack, 37 wounds to his body. But the forensic findings confirmed something even more significant. When police found Price, His body was no longer intact. The victim's remains had been treated in a way no one could have imagined. What Knight did to him after he died was fully documented in the forensic record and became an inseparable part of the case. The court would later describe those actions as extremely brutal and unprecedented in Australian legal history. The New South Wales police investigation didn't take long to identify the person responsible, because she was still at the scene when they arrived. Katherine Knight, found unconscious at Price's home, was identified straight away as the primary suspect. During the investigation, police uncovered another significant detail. Just one day before the incident, on 29 February 2000, Price had gone to Aberdeen Police Station to apply for an intervention order against Knight. He had told friends, "If I die, know that Kathy did it." Police also began gathering information about Knight's history of violence in previous relationships, and the picture that emerged was of a woman with decades of violent history that the system had never managed to fully stop. Katherine Knight was not the one who started the violence with Price. Before Price, she had been in several relationships, all of which showed signs of escalating violence at every stage. The first man, David Kellett. On their wedding night itself, Knight attacked Kellett after he fell asleep. This was not an impulsive act. It was the first sign of someone unable to control violent behavior, even in a moment meant to be one of the happiest of their lives. After giving birth, Knight suffered severe postnatal depression and showed dangerous behavior toward those around her during that period. A neighbor intervened in time. She also burned all of Kellett's clothing and attacked a stranger with a weapon, leaving the woman needing facial reconstruction. The second man, David Saunders. After leaving Kellett, Knight began a relationship with David Saunders, a man with whom she had a child. Knight harmed Saunders's puppy right in front of him, for no reason. This was described by psychologists as a display of control and intimidation. She wanted to show him what she was capable of. She later attacked Saunders with a weapon. The third man, John Chillingworth. They had 3 children together. The relationship ended, but not before further signs of violence. Each relationship was an escalation. Each escalation was a clearer sign. And each time, the system did not intervene strongly enough to stop the next one, until Knight met Price, and everything escalated to a point beyond saving. Knight and Price began their relationship in the early 1990s in Aberdeen. They lived in the same small town, where everyone knew each other, where Knight's history was no secret. Price knew she was dangerous. His friends knew, and Price himself said so plainly. But Price continued the relationship, something many people struggled to understand. This is what domestic violence experts call the cycle of an abusive relationship, where the victim knows the danger, but still cannot get out, for many complex reasons, including emotional attachment, mutual dependence, and a belief that they can control the situation. Price tried to keep a safe distance. He never let Knight move in with him. That was the boundary he set to protect himself and his children. But that boundary wasn't enough. In the final months before the incident, the relationship between Knight and Price grew more tense. Knight wanted more, to move in, to have an official life together. Price refused. And that refusal, to someone like Katherine Knight, was something she could not accept. On 29 February 2000, Price went to Aberdeen Police Station. He applied for an intervention order against Knight, the last step he could take within the law to protect himself. And he told his friends, more clearly than ever before, that he knew he was in danger. But that night, Knight came anyway. The night of 29 February, into the early hours of 1 March 2000. Forensic evidence confirmed both Knight and Price were in the house in Aberdeen that night. No witnesses, no cameras, only what the evidence left behind in that house could tell. Price died from 37 wounds, the result of a violent and relentless attack. But that was not all that happened that night. After Price died, Knight continued. For hours, in that dark house in Aberdeen, she carried out actions the court would later describe as extremely brutal and unprecedented in Australian legal history. Price's body had been treated in a way no one could have imagined, and what remained in that house after that night is what made this one of the most brutal cases in Australian history. After all of that, Knight took a dangerous dose of medication and lay down in the house. When police arrived, she was still alive, and the plates of food on the table were found and secured before any of Price's children could ever see them. The case file on Katherine Knight was built from multiple layers of undeniable evidence. First, direct evidence at the scene. Knight was at the house. Knight was found unconscious there. The entire scene directly linked her to the case. Second, the forensic findings, confirming Price died from a direct attack and confirming what happened to his body afterward. Third, the history of violence, records of Knight's previous relationships, all showing escalating signs of violence, were entered into evidence. Fourth, behavior after the incident. Knight took a dangerous dose of medication and lay down in the house after carrying out what she did. Behavior, the prosecution argued, showed she was fully aware of what she had done. The New South Wales Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions charged Katherine Knight over John Price's death, October 2001, more than a year after the incident. Throughout the investigation and case preparation, Knight had denied all charges, but just before the formal trial was due to begin at the Supreme Court of New South Wales, Knight suddenly changed her position. She suddenly pleaded guilty. No dispute, no denial, and no explanation or defense offered whatsoever. The trial ended in less than a day because there was nothing left to argue when the evidence was undeniable and the offender had admitted everything. Justice Barry O'Keefe took on the case file and prepared for sentencing. Justice Barry O'Keefe handed down the sentence at the Supreme Court of New South Wales. Katherine Mary Knight was sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. This was the first time in Australian history a woman had been sentenced in this way. Justice O'Keefe found the accused's actions that night were a combination of cruelty, malice, and a callous disregard for human life to a degree the court rarely has to consider. He also found Knight had an extremely dangerous personality with no capacity for rehabilitation, the primary reason for handing down a sentence with no possibility of parole. Knight is currently serving her sentence at Silverwater Women's Correctional Centre, New South Wales, and all applications to review her sentence have been rejected. The Katherine Knight case raises a question the Australian legal system has had to face, not just in 2000, but still today. Why wasn't Price protected, despite doing everything right? Price reported it to police. Price applied for an intervention order. Price warned his friends. Price never let Knight move in with him. He did every single step the system says you're supposed to do. But the intervention order was granted on 29 February, and Knight still came to his house that night. The first thing worth reflecting on, Knight's history of violence had been recorded early on, but was never dealt with strongly enough. From her wedding night with her first husband, to the attack on a stranger with a knife, to her behavior toward Saunders, Knight had a documented history of violence spanning years before she met Price. Those actions were recorded, but no intervention was strong enough to stop the next escalation. The second thing worth reflecting on, an intervention order is not a physical shield. This is a lesson many cases before and after Katherine Knight have left behind, and it still holds true today. A legal document can prohibit something in law, but it cannot physically stop someone determined to breach it. The question the system needs to answer isn't, was that document valid? It's, what do we do after granting that order to ensure the person who applied for it is actually protected? The third thing worth reflecting on, why did Price continue the relationship despite knowing the danger? This is a question many people ask, and the answer is not simple. Violence in an intimate relationship doesn't follow ordinary logic. Victims cannot always just leave, because there are invisible threads, emotion, dependence, fear, that hold them in dangerous situations outsiders cannot understand. Price knew the danger, but he also believed he could control the situation, that the distance he kept, never letting Knight move in, would be enough to protect him. He was wrong, and that was not his fault. Katherine Knight will never leave prison, and John Price will never come back. And the question this case leaves behind is not about Knight's sentence. That sentence is clear. It's about the warning signs that existed long before the night of 29 February 2000. In your view, when someone has a clear history of violence across multiple relationships, does the legal system have a responsibility to intervene earlier? And if so, why didn't that happen in Katherine Knight's case? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read all of them. The Katherine Knight case is not a story about a criminal who suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It is a story about a woman whose signs of violence were present very early on, and a system that didn't yet have the tools to stop the worst from happening. The first lesson: a history of violence is a warning sign, not a private matter. Knight had shown violent behavior in multiple relationships before Price. Those around her knew, police knew, but no intervention was strong enough to stop the escalation. If you know someone showing violent behavior in a relationship, don't think it's their business alone. Speak up. The second lesson: an intervention order needs to be enforced, not just granted. Price applied for the order the day before, but that document didn't stop Knight from coming to his house that night. This is a lesson many cases before this one have left behind, and it still holds true today. The third lesson: trust your own feeling of danger. Price knew he was in danger. He said so. He acted on it. If you're in a relationship where you feel unsafe, trust that feeling. Tell someone you love. Contact the authorities. Don't wait until it's too late. Crime Australia, HT produces this content for the purpose of informing and educating the community. We condemn all forms of violence. All information presented is based on court records and verified news sources.